You're in the Business Insurance Zone with me, Steve Savant, national insurance columnist and financial color commentator. And all this week, our series on marketing to the fiduciary community. And on today's Biz Show, reviewing policies and in-force ledgers with our special guest, CPA Ken Davis.
When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Well, welcome everybody to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Steve Savant, your host, and we're broadcasting to a nationwide audience of financial advisors right here in Fountain Hills, Arizona, home of America's largest fountain, and day 4 with our great fiduciary himself, CLU, CHFC, CFP, and CPA, Ken Davis.
Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Ken. I just want to let you know, I just feel like you're in your wheelhouse here. We're doing all this. All that is financial, all that is rating, all that is due diligence, all that is due care. And when we're talking about policy review, even I get to participate today. So let's get down to it. I cannot believe what I'm about to say to you, because now we have a history and we have proven statistics on this. 65% of all policies I review that are older than 4 to 5 years old are all generally replaced for different reasons. It could be medical. It could be the ratings of the carrier. It could have been the product reconfiguration. It could have been the strategy that actually was the reason why the policy was written, that strategy no longer exists, and another strategy is in its place. I want to be able to do policy reviews, and much of our fiduciary market wants this service. This is what is a mind blower to me. We have a natural in to review this, whether it's life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability. Those are policies that we can actually review for clients. So Ken, let's get down to it. When you're a CPA and you want to review this, what are you looking for in a policy? I mean, when you want to do a policy review, you don't know what we have. What are you looking for?
Well, I think you're going to have a certain amount of skepticism, especially on life insurance. When an agent comes to you and says, well, gee, we ought to replace that. Well, the first thing that comes to a fiduciary's mind is more commissions, more costs, more issues, whatever. So, there's a certain level of skepticism. So if we are going to be talking about life insurance, we better have a apples for apples comparison, internal rates of return, really get down to the detail and show them that in fact it works. And the other thing you're going to have to do is prove to them that your assumptions on your crediting rates are reasonable, because they're going to cut it to pieces and say you're just trying to make a new commission. So the fiduciary is there, remember, to protect the client, and they're going to look for reasons why not to do things. So you have to be prepared that if you make a decision it should be changed, that there's good reason for that.
Do you think, you just said that do they have a natural disposition to say no?
Well, I think so. I mean, look at it from their perspective. If they say yes, they have potential legal liability themselves. So they have a lot to lose in this whole situation. They're not making commissions. They might be making 1, 2, 3, 4 hours worth of fees, and yet we're talking thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of insurance, and something goes bad and blows up in their face. Yeah, they're going to be careful not to put themselves in that position. So they will be skeptical.
Well, when I'm looking at policy, or in my case, in many cases, policies, sometimes when I'm looking at multiple policies on the same insured, I'm going to be able to go down to 1 policy fee versus 3 to 4. I'm going to maybe hit some break points. Remember, some carriers give us break points on death benefit. I'm going to look at that. Sometimes there's reasons to look at it at the Part 2 level. This is so interesting, Ken, because our industry is so built on the client's health category, right? What are we going to give? What's the underwriting going to give? So when I look at a policy review, the first thing I want to see is I want to see the front page of a policy and examine that front page. It's going to give me how much death benefit, date of birth, when the policy was issued, who's the owner, who's the insured, who's the beneficiary, because I can't just change ownerships at will. There's tax consequences to this. And I can't do certain things depending upon beneficiaries. I got to remember, I could change it as the owner, but should I? See, and I don't know. I have to review it. So when I'm looking at it, one thing that was brought up to me early on when I started engaging in CPA, which you actually introduced me to their community, I have to say the difference between, and this was a big one for me to learn, current company practice versus the contractual guarantees. I have my policy in front of me, and nobody sold off a sample policy. They all sold off the proposal. And remember, tomorrow we're going to get into all that on the proposal, illustrations, internal rate of return, and expense report. So Ken, when I'm sitting there in front of CPA and the guy says to me, well, I reviewed the policy, and if you've never reviewed a policy from cover to cover, which I have to say, mind-numbing, the first time you do it, it'll put the fear of God in you. I promise you. Most of my producers and agents have never ever done a policy review, and you're talking about the contract. Now, the policy is a contract.
Yes, it
the
is.
proposal may have very little to do with the actual contract. So, current company practice versus contractual guarantee.
Well, yeah, and these are important. You might say, well, gosh, why should I sit down and read all this gobbledygook and everything else? I've got my illustration, that's what I sell from. Well, in one particular circumstances, I was up against another agent. I showed a better alternative as a replacement. The client loved it. He was an engineer and he was just picking up all this detail. And then he goes back to his friend who he goes to church with and says, hey, this guy Ken Davis said, here's what I should be doing. And he said, well, let me rework it. So he comes back with another proposal, pretty much copies what I do and finds another carrier that'll beat it in terms of cash value. Well, we looked at the guaranteed sheet, and at the bottom in the footnotes was that other contract allowed the company to change contractually to 200 basis point spread, although they were illustrating 0. Our contract was better designed and may have had a little lower income. However, contractually, it was a 0 net cost loan. So knowing the minutia, knowing the detail, and understanding contracts can help you win the case. And the guy actually then did buy it from me, went against his friend, went against an existing policy, and made the change, made the sale.
Well, I'm all over the minutia, as you put it. My advisors may not be wanting to get this deep, our producers, but I can tell you this, we do that. That's one of our big services. And we have found that managing the minutia, I like that phrase, is exactly how we can get in front of the CPA and attorneys and all the fiduciary market. That's why we're talking about this, and we're going to be giving it away at www.brokersalliance.com/gatekeepers. When we come back from the commercial, we're going to talk about our Turnkey Life program so we can do analysis and policy review and help put you in front of a fiduciary to be able to sell a great
You're
contract.
listening to the insurance industry's #1 resource for products, planning ideas, carrier information, and interviews you can use. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Companies in our business are always touting service, products, and underwriting. And we do that too. But here's the difference. Now enter the world of the elite producer with a value package that cuts us out of the pack. A BD that approves social media marketing of non-FINRA products and doesn't take an override. With the best competition desk in the industry, and for our loyal producers, a true group health plan. No one offers that. Brokers Alliance does.
Well, welcome back to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Steve Savan along with Ken Davis, and we're talking about policy review. And we talked about not only the contract, but inside the contract is in the back is the application. I want to see all the Part 2 medical questions. I want to look at all the information that's inside that contract at the back of the policy, because I want to be able to say, is this medical condition, has it changed? Should I order a full review, which by the way may cost money for the review itself? I always want to look at that medical issue because so many things have changed in the last 5 years. Ken, I mean health categories. Remember, we have super preferred, preferred plus, preferred, standard plus, standard. Now this new phrase by 4 carriers, expanded standard. I don't even know if we're going to use table B anymore. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And one of the other items that I want to talk about is the annual statement. If I can get that annual statement, I can kind of see what the policy is, where we began. The annual statement is now where we're at.
Right.
I love current information about annual statements. And the big thing about it is I have found that CPAs and attorneys, enrolled agents, they love annual statements. They want to see the original policy and the annual statement itself.
Well, sure, and that makes sense. They're numbers driven, and they said, okay, this is what you projected, here's where we're at. And then we can come in and doing the evaluation, show them how to save the contract, either by putting more money in, reducing face, changing to a new policy or whatever. We can actually help correct the issues that are there. And these policies do require ongoing evaluation, not just because interest rates are lower, but because the environment changes. Somebody might have been in great health 10 years ago and got a decent rating, but now they could get super preferred even though they're older.
All right.
And I think many times we live in substandard land and think that's where underwriting is important. But with 5 gradations of gray, as you just pointed out on the preferred side of it, it's time to be looking hard at that and making sure. And then the other thing when you're saying look at the medicals, you know, you taught me years ago sometimes that if you ask more questions and give the underwriter more ammunition, you know, you might think, well, it's this type of cancer, but there might be 5 different versions of that cancer. Some are more serious than others. If you can ask questions, gather that information and submit it to the underwriter, then you've given them an excuse of saying, oh, okay, well, with this, we know this is a better rating. So, you know, gathering information, doing that hard work, when you're dealing with these huge cases, those little amounts, if you can go from, you know, preferred plus to super preferred, boom, you may save tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're going to win the case.
Oddly enough, I was looking at a nice term contract, $2 million, but it was an older client, so it had some significant premium. What really caught my eye was I ordered the actual contract specs to see when I could convert it. The client, as you suggested, had a health change, and not for the good, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I said, I went back and I wrote a small cover letter for my producer. And he sent that to his client saying, I just want you to know that this year your conversion's up. If we don't need the coverage, and he had still a little more time for the coverage, if you don't think you're going to need to change this as a permanent, remember, he knew nothing about the client's health.
Right.
And he just sent it out, and the client called back and said, I'm so glad you sent this to me. I have now contracted a disease, and it is a life-threatening disease, and I would like to go ahead and convert to a permanent policy. And then I said, well, I wonder how many other people I have. So I went and did our database research and said, how many contracts are going to conversion on this? And I could not believe how many people said, you know what, now that I'm older, I only needed the term, but now I'm ready to convert. That little reminder of the window, but I would have never found that out without doing a policy review. I would have never found that out without looking at the contractual specs that go with it, the policy specs. When can I do that? It's very important. I mean, this is why we're talking about it.
Well, and I think, you know, people's viewpoints change. You know, if you have even just a 10-year term policy and you're 9 years and 6 months into it, and you go back and remind, and people had in their mind a projection of what the world was going to be like 10 years out. Well, as we all know, the financial sector implosion puts people in a lot more vulnerability than they thought they were going to be, and suddenly go, you know, I didn't think I was going to need this policy, but yeah, my wife and kids or whoever needs this money. And I guess the other thing too is some of these people don't realize it, but some of these term policies, maybe it's a 20-year term, might have conversion only for 10 years.
Right, half the window.
And
right.
so, you know, calling them at 9 years, even though there's 11 years left, and saying, hey, your conversion rate's here. Are you sure, you know, this could be valuable? And they go, well, yeah, I've had some medical issues, and I see the value in that, and so they have that right to convert. So conversion features are important.
When we use our life insurance financial evaluation, it's a complete turnkey package to do policy review. And we also do within that, and again, you can order it at www.brokersalliance.com/gatekeeper. When you go out there, you see all of our shows giveaways for this week. That turnkey is so great, and inside that, I always like to order in-force ledgers. We'll get into a lot more of that tomorrow on the income side. I cannot tell you the games that carriers play on in-force ledgers, and tomorrow we'll really get into it. But most people that I know of that are selling term say, well, I don't need in-force ledgers. I like to look at the conversion ability. I want to see if I did convert it, what it would look like.
Right.
And then do I have any permanent policies that are on the books right now? I'd like to get the actual test. I want to see what it has done and what they projected under current assumptions. An in-force ledger is to die for. And let me tell you, in the old days, it took months to get them. Now, most carriers are playing pretty well. You'll always want to do it, especially with a permanent policy. I always want to see what the in-force ledger is. And the last thing, remember, sometimes if we're going to do a full review and the Part 2 medical area warrants it, I may order APSs. And sometimes I can get the client to pick up their entire attending physician statement, all because we don't know if we want to go and change the contract out yet. They usually can get the APSs for you so that you don't have to spend any money. Well, don't forget to watch this show and all our shows on the on-demand section located on our homepage at www.brokersalliance.com. Well, that's the Buzz on the Biz for today. You've been in the zone, the business insurance zone.
The Biz is brought to you by Brokers Alliance. a national leader in insurance products, support services, and educational workshops. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.